So if you've been watching top-tier CSGO, you've probably noticed or are going to notice a new name within the top-end tournament scene lately. Among the top names that you expect to be playing in the top flight, a name from the Tier 2 atmosphere has started to do the rounds. Now, not everybody is interested in Tier 2, so the background knowledge of this team might be lacking, but if you're curious about the recent newcomers in the Blast Premier Showdown, then you might want to start paying attention. The team I'm referring to is 9, a Polish squad of established players that have managed to make the start of 2023 undisputedly theirs. Branded as the current best team in the Tier 2 scene, they've set their sights on breaking through the glass ceiling of Tier 1 competition, something that very few squads have achieved so far. With 9 competing in the aforementioned Blast Showdown and the upcoming Paris RMR and IEM Rio, now would be a good time to take stock and get caught up to this squad and what they've got to make a splash on the big stages. 9 themselves are a Swedish organisation, fielding rosters in various nationalities. Previously, they've sported a Turkish team headlined by current Eternal Fire player xFloud, a European team headed up by Fnatic or Panikados, and a plethora of names from within the Swedish Tier 2 and Tier 3 scene. The Polish project began in August 2022 with the signing of 2 former Wisła Kraków players and the subsequent rebuild that followed. This squad weren't short of established talents. In-game leader Minio had been playing since 2015, Kai and Kyler had worked under him with Anonymo, which is the team that managed to upset NIP in the Flashpoint RMR in 2021, and Goofy and Sparrow in their long-standing Wisła run cultivated eventual ends Orpa Hades while having their own period of Tier 2 dominance. Now, if you're listening to that achievement list and thinking, so what, then I don't blame you. Established talents make not a world-class team, especially if it's not established at the top flight, even if they have had longer playing time than some of the world champions. Comparing the results from the end of Wisła to the beginning of 9, you can see that something was lost in translation. Going from second placings in local leagues and a number of international appearances to multiple failures in multiple qualifiers, struggling to find success in the Champion of Champions events and only barely making it back to the ESL Polish National Championship. And even then, the struggles in those online cups showed that the rebuild wasn't 100% foolproof. The only true bright spot was a tournament win in the ESL Challenger League, qualifying 9 for the Pro League Conference, but with only one other finish in the top 8 or above, it was clear that changes had to be made. On December 1st, the decision was made to part ways with Sparrow, leaving Goofy as the last standing player from that original Wisła Kraków team. The rest of the year was spent fielding a stand-in without the success brought on by a permanent 5th, and the team would rely on the virtue of patience to be to their benefit as they waited until New Year to pull the trigger. The question of who would be that final 5th remained in everyone's minds, and in that time, a familiar name would become available. Now, you may have heard of Hades, although it will feel like a long time since you last saw him. The Orpa had already played with Goofy on Wisła Kraków before, and his performance there had earned him a stint in Tier 1 with Ents. Whilst his time with the team was fantastic with top placements including ESL Pro League, IEM Dallas, and a top 4 at the Antwerp Major, his own stagnation meant that he had been riding the bench for months, playing only on loan to Finest till mutually terminating his contract with Ents in December of 2022. So where do you go if you're a Polish Orpa who's proven at Tier 1 and 2 levels, hoping to bounce back from the setback with connections to an old teammate currently seeking an Orpa? 13 days into 2023 and Hades was officially announced on 9. Whilst the teething period was still to follow, particularly at the aforementioned Pro League Conference, 9 immediately picked up the pace, sunning the scene, qualifying for the Intel Extreme Masters Rio via the Open Qualifier. And Hades' impact couldn't be understated. Falling apart at times, sure, but simultaneously hitting ceilings so high that he could hard carry a match. The backing of his experienced teammates meant that even when he had dipped, victory could still be recovered. Successes have been so great that 9's year so far has seen them win 33 out of 44 best-of-3 matches, a complete turnaround from 2022. The match wins mean tournament wins. Eventually, 9 would manage their second significant qualification, the RMR. Now, the fortune of 9's specific results enabled them to make it to 17th on Valve's regional rankings, allowing 9 to bypass over the Open Qualifier and straight into the Swiss stage. And not only did 9 qualify, they qualified in 1st place, beating fellow qualifying teams Eternal Fire and Into the Breach, and G2, the other 3-0 team, in the Bukol tiebreaker. It was quick progression. Within not even 3 months, 9 had taken 2 significant land spots, but to complete a trifecta, you need a 3rd piece. Making it to the Blast Showdown was a slightly more difficult affair for 9, having to come from the third-party Western European tournament by Relog Esports. 9 didn't get an invite this time, having to go through the Polish Clash qualifying event, and whilst 9's overall record was impressive, it wasn't spotless. Their primary kryptonite was in fact fellow Polish teams. Call it the playstyle familiarity or great player knowledge, but they would constantly struggle in the domestic derbies. To even have a chance at Rest West, 9 had to plough through a number of these derbies with serious upset potential, even as a top seed. Fortunately for this story, the run was well placed, with a little bit of forfeit help from Permitter Esports in the first round of the playoffs, leading to an eventual grand final. All of 9's matches went to 16-9 or closer, with the finals against Permitter themselves going to all 3 maps. But fortunately, 9 would come out on top to jump the first hurdle in their journey. The main event was a confident environment for 9 at the start, with best of ones in a group stage where 2 invited squads of Gamer Legion and Endpoint were seeded into the opposite group. Talk about a layup. Whilst any one map could have derailed the journey for 9, the skill gap between them and the rest of the group was too large for any significant fears. The playoffs would offer a much more significant challenge though, with 9 having to take on both of the respective invitees to get to the showdown. Endpoint turned out not to be a problem, as they were in the middle of their own roster rebuild, but Gamer Legion was a far tougher task. At this point in time, 9 were where Gamer Legion used to be. The new team on the block, fresh off significant roster changes and making a run at the RMR, sounds a lot like Gamer Legion's successes in Rio, beating world's best G2 along the way, the ultimate case study to why you should pay attention to underdog teams. But in this case, they had the experience that 9 didn't. An edge in the grand final would give them favoritism, but still a 3-map affair, with both sides striding on their respective map picks and leading to a vertigo that went all the way. In the end, Gamer Legion would fall, and 9 would stand tall, bound for the showdown. And if you've been watching the last week of Counter-Strike, you probably will know how this goes. This was the first taste of the Tier 1 environment for 9, and even though it was still an online tournament, it was for a shot at the Blast Finals, so no punches would be pulled, especially with their first opponents in Fnatic. Incredible as 9 may be, their position in this tournament was low, debatably ahead only of Rare Atom, and with 9's first opponents being a much tougher squad with another massive experience advantage, surely 9 would stand no chance here, right? Right.
Down, a good headshot and the squeeze. Oh, jump and the flash on top. It is. Waiting around. Oh, right there with the return. It's still a 2-on-2. And now they're actually going to just keep fighting. Tyler's going to pick up one more kill. The Havas is doing so much work. Flashbang set up good opening. 3 kills out in the open video. 9 winning the opening map against instant shutdown. Linear was there. Look at Hades. Being picked up, just 6 seconds left, and they're gonna push. Oh no, he stopped it, he's fighting him instead! Well, now it's a 2-on-2, that's a good round to take, right? Yeah, it is. Factor swings out, but Goopy takes him down. Grim still holding his ground, and tagged in. Swing and sandwiched in, they're both coming for him, he has no idea when he lost. He takes down Grims, and this is too much. 1 versus 4, him down, then they're gonna be able to recover his aim.
It was a bloodbath, with 9 managing to pull off not only a 16-6 map win to start, but a 2-1 series overall to eliminate Fnatic in the first round. In one foul swoop, 9 had proven their potential in all facets, qualifying for 2 significant lands and pulling off wins over Tier 1 teams. Whilst Fnatic are admittedly not the strongest in the Tier 1 space, nobody could have seen this coming, even 9's biggest supporters. Sadly, the showdown would not be the 3rd LAN qualifier that 9 would have hoped it to be, but they would bow out taking the fight to big with a 2-1 series featuring 2 16-14 maps that still could have made it 2-0 if 9 had just won one more round here or there. The idealist in me would have loved them to go all the way to the finals, but the realistic fact is that 9 probably could have achieved everything that they wanted to in these last 3 months. With a message sent to the entire CSGO scene, their attention turns to the RMR and IEM Rio. 9 will lead the charge of the rising squads as they try to become the dark horses of the season. And whilst typically with team lists this stacked you'd expect to write 9 off instantly, the proof is now in the upsets and a rise quicker than Gambit, so if you weren't paying attention, you are now.